Kayla, thank you so much and welcome everybody to our foundational track on program evaluation. Before I introduce our wonderful speaker, I'd like to go over some housekeeping that we have as well. First, the Indigenous land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we live and work in territories where Indigenous nations and tribal groups are traditional stewards of the land. Our California office resides in the Tongva territory. Please join us in supporting efforts to affirm tribal sovereignty across what is now known as California, and in displaying respect, honor, and gratitude for all Indigenous people. If you'd like to learn more, here are some resources listed here. And next, I would like to go over our community agreements very quickly. So just keep in mind that we all agree when we come together that we're going to be present and be an active listener. Remember, one mic, one voice, so please take turns. If somebody's speaking, wait until you have a chance to do so as well. Practice inclusivity, honor pronouns and gender identity, show respect, and keep in mind this may look different for other people. Allow conflicting perspectives to exist, assume best intentions, take space, make space. So again, we want you to speak up, we want you to ask your questions and share your experiences, but ensure that other people have the opportunity as well. Share what you are comfortable sharing, and at the same time, protect individual privacy. Practice self-care. If you need to get up and use a restroom, stretch, please do so. Encourage growth of self and for others, and also support resource sharing. So in this topic, if there's something that you use that works really well for you and your organization, please do add that to the chat. And just a reminder that this is our two-track event. So making sure you're in the right space. This is the foundational. I'm not going to go over all of this, but just know that it is different from the advanced. So if you do feel like you should be in the advanced, just reach out to one of our IT support. They can give you the link to register. But again, this is the foundational. This is actually our last two-track event, and appropriately, it's on the topic of program evaluation. And with that, I'm very excited to introduce our presenter, Joe Romano. Joe Romano is the president of Joe Romano Associates and Green Mountain Life Coaching, with over 35 years of experience in the recovery field, leadership, and organization development. She's a certified recovery and personnel professional life coach and a member of the International Coach Federation. And with that, Joe, I'm just pleased to pass it over to you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Rachel, for that introduction. And hello, everyone. I am so very, very happy and honored to be here to learn with you about the foundations of program evaluation. Did a lot of research on this, and what I found was really an interesting tip. Did you know that evaluation didn't even start and be recognized as a process to do until 1965. 1965, evaluation became funded for the first time with the signing of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. So at that point, we started looking at promising programs. They began to be funded, and evaluation became formalized as a profession. Prior to that, we didn't have evaluation experts that we could just call up and say, please be on our team. And there are now peer-reviewed journals and promising practices. And then that's when the evaluation experts started to emerge, and a new field got created, and a new career field. Research and evaluation is really different. The goal of research is to add knowledge to any discipline or field. But the goal of evaluation is an effort to provide a way, a map, a visual and understanding for useful methods for a stakeholder to make the change that they want to see in the world. And we're going to talk about what stakeholders are. So let's go back. I'm going back to the learning objectives. Today, we want to learn about the importance of program evaluation and its value in measuring success. It's hard to measure success without data and without tools. And we're going to look at a key foundational tool called the logic model. And we're going to look at using evaluation questions and ways to use that data to measure success. We're going to list three, you'll be able to list 3 evaluation methods that an evaluation team would use. We're going to identify best practices for collecting and evaluating data. And we're going to explain the role of stakeholders and how they play a gigantic part in evaluation. Evaluation always seems to come last, but really it should come first. And I think you're going to hear why. Because before we start anything, there's got to be a theory. We got to have a theory about something and then decide, what program we want to correct a problem or make a change. Okay. So right now, I'd like you to participate in the chat and put your name and one thing you know about program evaluation and one thing you'd like to know about program evaluation. So there's those questions right in the chat. Thank you, Rachel, for putting those up. Your name, where you're from, what is one thing about evaluation that you know and one thing that you'd like to know? We'll just take a moment for that. Hi, Sandy. Doctor? Lauren? Mm-hmm. Okay, people want to know about stakeholder input. They know that evaluation is important. How to use that data is really important. And you also know that data is important, yet you don't know what else is important to see the full picture. So great. It does involve data collection. When you're a small organization, how do you do this evaluation so you can get better funding? Is it easier for larger corporations? I'll tell you that right now. The answer is no. We all do it the same way. Okay. And that data is open to interpretation and translation. Very important to know. Yeah, we have to have a robust assessment plan, and we must ensure that the data is pure and not corrupted. A good role for the evaluation team. And the evaluation team is not just you who's in charge of program evaluation in your organization. It involves a circle of people who get together and you figure out those questions together. Measurable data, expectations, compliance. Compliance. I'll just tell you one thing. We don't have any slide on compliance, but I will tell you that compliance is absolutely mandatory, and whoever your funder is, you follow their request to the T. If they say they want a font that's 18 and you've got 25, go back to 18. If you don't follow everything they say, whether you agree with it or not, you may not even get looked at. Okay, so let's begin. Thank you for your input. So what is program evaluation? Program evaluation is, according to the Center for Disease Control, the systematic collection of information about activities. It's about resources that you have to conduct those activities, just about the characteristics of your program, who the people are that you're serving, and the outcomes of the program for use by people to reduce uncertainties, improve effectiveness, and make decisions. It's really hard to make decisions about what we should do to evaluate. Program evaluation has the tools and a format for that. Let's see. Okay, let's see. So let's go to the next slide, and I will do that. What is the value of program evaluation? Well, Evaluation, it helps us to measure our successes with reliable data, which usually we don't have. We can make a hypothesis, but that's just a theory without anything to back it up, without any evidence. You see, when a problem exists, you don't know what to do about it, but you must find a way. And that's in a collaborative dialogue and systematic approach that's needed to make that happen. This is why evaluation is important. It helps us find out what works and does not work. And if something's not working in the middle of your program, you want to stop and change it. You want to change that process. Because if we don't, then it's not cost effective. It enables adaptation for program improvement. In other words, along the way, we can change whatever we're doing to improve it. Without this framework of evaluation, that's hard to do. It demonstrates what your program does and how it benefits the participants in the community and society at large. It's very clear and specific and explicit. It adds to the existing knowledge base about your program, because as you're going along doing your program, more and more information about who you're serving and what they need and what their highest priority needs are. You might be working on a need, but it may not be the high priority need. So it demonstrates what your program does and how it benefits. And it adds to the existing knowledge base, and it builds sustainability and expansion, because without this program, you have to meet the requirements set by many of your funders, by all of your funders, and they're different. Some are alike, some are different. So you really need to get a template on how you're going to respond to how you're going to do the evaluation, and then also so you can build sustainability and expand the program even after it's done. So evaluation boils down to making the change you want to see happen in a clear, responsible, and cost-effective way. This is why evaluation is what evaluation is most concerned about. It tells us where we're going, how will we get there, how will you know when you arrive, and what resulted now, immediately. What resulted a short-term outcome, a midterm outcome, and the long-term impact that'll have on not only on your organization, but the participants and society as a whole. Okay. All right. So let's move into a logic model, defining what a logic model is. There are many tools, many useful tools that are available when evaluating your program. But a key foundational one is called the logic model. It's used to design a program, help create your evaluation plan. It defines changes that you want to make along the way. And it tells you what impact your program is having. So a logic model is like a roadmap. Just think of your GPS. You're going on vacation, you start at home, and you want to go across country. Maybe you want to go to the East Coast because you live in the West Coast. And there's all sorts of steps along the way to get there, and all sorts of resources that you need, and all sorts of things that you got to do, and errands that you got to do, activities that you do to prepare for that vacation and getting there. And then you either do or you don't, because if you're gonna go out of country, let's say, to vacation, you need a passport, and either that's going to get done on time or it's not. And it will affect the result, whether you go on vacation or not, if you don't have your passport. Just trying to give you some idea of that's all evaluation is. It's a roadmap to get to the change that you want to make. It's a visual representation of your program's resources, activities, outputs. And what we mean by that is, did the activities happen the way you wanted them to happen? And then the outcomes, what did happen and what changed because of what you did. And again, this tool is telling us, where do we want to go? How will we get there? When will we arrive? And so what? What change did it make? So we use a logic model to assess a program. So I'm going to ask, well, maybe I won't do that now. Let's go to the next slide, which is the logic model. Right. Okay. So let's take a, let me explain the logic model, and then we're going to take a poll. Okay. So on the left side, imagine the word problem going up and down in that white space next to the box inputs. We got to have a problem that we want to change and fix. Okay, so you have this problem, and then you think about, okay, what resources do we have to solve this problem? And resources could be people, money, materials, anything that you need. In order to then, the activities is we need to plan some activities. What are we going to do? When? Where is it going to happen? How often? I will give you examples. So, well, no, let me give you an example of that right now. So let's say a logic model is also answered, it's a set of if-then statements. If our recovery organization wants to do outreach, and if we want to get more people coming to our center to help them in recovery, then what will we do as an activity to do outreach? And so you have the resources, activities, and then it has the outputs, which is the product of the activity. So in other words, if I say one of the activities is that we're going to put a sign outside, that's an activity. And it's going to stay outside for like 30 days saying, come here in recovery, you find support and help, that kind of thing. And then at the end of those 30 days is the output. Did you put the sign up and in 30 days and for 30 days? And if the answer is yes, then you did it. You had the product. And then we look at the outcomes. What are the short-term outcomes? What are the midterm outcomes? And what are the long-term outcomes? So outcomes are short-term. We assess the results. We adjust our program, the activities and outputs as needed. Maybe we need to do a lot more to do outreach. And then also assess the results over and the impact over time. That maybe today we only have like 5 people coming in a day, and we want to up that to 50 people a day. The long-term outcome may be 50 people, but the short-term may be that we go from 5 to 10 a day. Now, with that little information that I just gave you, let's do a poll. And Michaela, let's see, Michaela, can you share with us what the poll is? What the questions to be asked? Oh, I guess I can do that. So there's a poll. Please answer the questions. Have you used the logic model as a tool to help you with program evaluation, design, and planning? Yes or no? And the second question is, on a scale of 1 to 5, how familiar are you with the logic model tool in program evaluation? Okay. So about 25% of us, as we continue, do know about the logic model, but we have a 30% somewhat familiar. A lot of people are not familiar. So we'll just so for those of you that are familiar, if there's anything you want to add, please jump in by writing in the chat, and Rachel will look for that, and maybe we can share what it is you think. So we'll end the poll right now. Thank you. Let me just, we're sharing the results. Okay. All right. Okay. So logic model is a series of if-then statements. If we take the inputs, which are the resources, and we use them to conduct our activities. And we use them to conduct our activities, which is the second component of a logic model, mapping. And we actually do those activities, which is the product of the activities. We're going to get some outcomes, and hopefully the ones that we needed and wanted. So creating a logic model helps articulate the problem and come up with ideas for resources. Okay. Okay. The components explained. All right. So you'd have to go back to the visual of the logic model here, but in the first box, it's inputs. I don't know about you, but whenever I hear scientific words like inputs and outputs, I start to, get confused. Inputs are just resources, the things that we need in order to do what we want to do. So that includes staff. So that includes inputs can be your resources that you'll need to address the effort and the plan that you have. Time. Do you have enough time to do this? Do you have enough staff to do any activities that you want to do? Let's say you need to do some training. Let's say, do you have enough materials? Maybe you have to create some materials for the program to help people understand what it is you're doing and trying to do. Do you have enough volunteers to do it? If not, then, you've got to get volunteers. Do you have enough participants to even get involved? And do you have enough stakeholders who know what you're doing and can support that? So if you do, that's great. But if you don't, then you've got to stop and figure out a way to get the money, figure out a way to get the staff, figure out a way. So in other words, you're backing up and you're developing the resources you need in order to move forward. So the activities, the second box, is specific actions that you will take, where, when, and how. We will produce a guidance we will produce an intake form, and we will produce a resource guide for everyone who comes to our center. That is an activity. We're going to do it within, by June 1st, and then we're going to distribute it to how many participants. We're going to put it in the newspaper or whatever, whatever document that you want to share. And we're going to do that by a certain day. Uh-oh. Okay. Okay. So, and then the outputs is what happens immediately when you conduct those activities. Did you get the guidance document done? Did you disseminate it? Did you send it out to everybody, the staff, stakeholders, so they all know what you're doing? Did you do it? And so that's all that column is all about. Did we complete what we said we were going to do? So maybe I wanted to train 30 people, 30 guests, or 30 people, or maybe 30 stakeholders to learn more about recovery, but we only 15 showed up. That's okay. And in the output column, we want to say that 15 out of the 30 got trained. Okay. And then we move to outcomes. What happened, what resulted, and what changed. That's the result of your program. So the outcomes are the change that you achieved. So here, the outcomes, this whole logic model, you're moving the needle towards your goal. Short-term outcomes, what's changing right now? And long-term and mid-term outcomes, what's changing throughout all, the time of the whole program process. Okay. And then the long-term outcomes is that impact. What has changed over time? So as you can see, the process answers the three key questions that a logic model and evaluation answers. Where are you going? How will we get there? And how will we know when we arrived? And so what? What difference did it make? Some of you may know, like, as you said, the logic model, and others, it's a new concept. So now I'm going to take you and give you an example. This is an example that I came up with that actually I do consulting work with recovery organizations and prevention organizations and also workplace development. And here is this was a Midwestern recovery organization. And their problem was there's a lot of rural people that could never even get to their center. And even if they came to the center, they found that once they came for intake, they couldn't get to another meeting. It was really hard for them to get there the first time. There was no access to, no transportation to get to doctor's appointments, to get to economic services, for housing or to help themselves at all. So they really needed access to services. They happened to have the money. They did write a grant for grant dollar. They had the grant dollars to buy 4 vans. So they already had 4 vehicles. And the drivers they felt could be the guests that do come regularly if they give them a job. And so, which is perfect. And then they needed some program materials to help people understand this program, and the drivers understand what was really required of them when they're going out rural in the roads, and when they're traveling to pick up people who are rural, and also when they're taking them to meetings here and there and to doctor's appointments. So they decided, what we really need to designate a staff coordinator within 7 days, right away. Because if we want to get 4 drivers up and running, we got to train them, we've got to write about this material, and we got to get a coordinator because we're too busy in the office. Okay, so that was an activity that they said we needed to hire 4 guests to drive within 30 days. And you can imagine what that entailed. Really knowing these guests, asking them if they want to do it, do they have good driving records, that kind of thing. We also felt that they should have 2-hour driver training sessions within 30 days, what we expected them when they drive. Okay, so we wanted to train them. And of course, we just really felt that there should be daily check-ins with the coordinator when they're actually doing, they should have daily check-ins with the coordinator to continue to talk about what is expected of them. And then when they're actually out in the vans doing the work and transporting guests, they should check in daily because I'm sure issues come up. Then they said, okay, meanwhile, this is all just, they're just thinking about all this. If we designate the staff coordinator, there'll be daily check-ins. And then the outputs are, what happened was within 7 days, they did designate a staff person to be the coordinator for this program. And 4 guests were hired in 14 days. And 3 sessions were held in 14 days. 3 sessions were held in 40 days. So they did not reach the output that they changed it. See that? They changed it. So instead of having 2 2-hour sessions, they had 3 sessions in 40 days instead of 30. So they felt that the people who were going to do this driving needed more information and more time to figure this out. And instead of daily check-ins, they were just all too busy. So the coordinator met with them weekly. Okay. And the short-term hope here is that there will be a 50-cent increase to access to services. And in the long term, a 90% increase to access to services in the community. So that's an example of how to use it. Okay. Go to the next slide here. And then I told you about the theory of change. Oh dear. Let me see here. Yeah. We all have to come up with this idea about, like way back in the 1900s when the sailors were on ships and they were coming down with scurvy. That's a big problem. Nobody knew what scurvy was. And so they had to come up with some theories, hypotheses, and they did, and somehow they did, but they didn't have the logic model to go by. And they did find that, having fruits corrected the problem. But there was a theory there saying, well, the only thing we don't have on these ships right now for these people is fruit. So maybe we should try that out. That was a theory. So we start with the theory of change when designing a program using a logical model to create an evaluation plan. There's nothing as practical as a good theory to get started. Now, who creates this theory? It's not just a staff person assigned for evaluation. You'll hear me say this over and over again. There's certain messages here. It's a group of people that come together. You can hire an evaluation expert, but if you think he or she is the one that's going to do it all, the answer is no. You need to have stakeholders in that circle as well, who are doing the hard work and asking the hard questions. Does this make sense, what we're planning here? Does it fit to what is needed? Does it seem practical? Is it practical? Is it even cost effective? Can we even manage getting the resources that we need and doing this? Do we have the time for it? And why are we doing this? Always asking the question, why are we making this change? A good theory strengthens and helps frame your program. And it's in writing. So it puts attention and resources on key aspects of the program. It asks the program evaluation team to make their assumptions explicit, clear, and in writing. And believe me, you follow this logic model, you will get the funding, because they'll see that you're thinking and you're asking those questions and you're using the tools that get you the answers. And that's all they want to know. They want to know if their money is making change, because they have to answer to the taxpayers. And it also reaches consensus with colleagues about what they're trying to do and why. Okay, so let's go to the next slide here. Now, talking about an evaluation plan, there are 6 steps to an evaluation plan. Creating evaluation questions. And an evaluation question is just a powerful question. It doesn't call for a yes or no answer. It calls for, it's so powerful that that your team of circle of evaluators have to sit and think for the answer. Otherwise, there is no answer. So the powerful questions usually start off with why. Who are why, who, what, when, where, and so what, that kind of thing. It's an open question and it's powerful, and you need to figure out what questions to ask in your plan. And then the evaluation plan will identify the data required. That's those activities that we talked about. It'll collect data. And we're going to talk about how to do that. And it'll analyze data, and it'll interpret the data, and then report the data out. I can't tell you how many evaluation efforts forget to report what happened. They may be afraid, maybe they feel that they'll get kickback, that they didn't do it enough. No, if you're going to go that far, you need to report the data out. So that's an evaluation plan. Okay. And then, okay, so turning the logic model into evaluation questions and indicators. All right, so just looking at this right here, I told you evaluation questions. If you Google evaluation questions, program evaluation questions, you will get pages and pages and articles with listing all the questions that you can ask under the resource category. What do we need here, and then under the activity, when you have a program, what, there are questions, open questions, and certainly outcome questions as well. But here are some. So you notice on the top, it says process and outcome, because this whole thing it's an implementation plan. A logic model is an implementation plan. And those first three inputs, activities, and outputs, it's part of the process. And so under resources or inputs, are the resources adequate to implement this program or this practice, what we want to do? Are they adequate to implement the activities? It's all part of the process. Now, these are questions that call for yes or no, but that's not what they should be restated here. Activities. What practices are we implementing? Did we implement the practices as planned? That's a yes or no. So you see, you have to really, look at, rather than saying yes, is what practices were implemented as planned? And then the outputs, how many, how much was produced? What was the result? And then the outcome section of the logic model is your outcome, your results, the short term. And usually short term is change in knowledge, because if you're going to have a pre and post test, let's say, or if you're going to do a training with guests who are going to be drivers to help the access for other guests who come after them, that's an increase in knowledge. So you definitely want that. You might change some policies. You definitely want that. The policy wasn't there until you put this logic model into place and said, we're going to create a policy on when people are transporting, exactly how they need to behave, that kind of thing. Suddenly you've got a new policy, and you've got, can't read it, and then you've got the environment. And then the intermediate are, is there a change in your system, in your recovery organization? Is there a change in the system? And then the long term is there a change in health status? In other words, are people going into recovery and getting well? And are we reducing the use of substance use disorder and whatever we're trying to make change? And then there's the big impact, which is the change in the population. And a big example of that is smoking. I mean, this campaign has been going on for like 50 years or 40 years. Well, 1965, we found out that smoking was not good, according to the Surgeon General. So from 1965 to now, we're still working on this program. And it has made great changes. That's an impact. Okay, so let's move along here. Let's see. There are 3 evaluation methods and tools for collecting value. There are 3 evaluation methods to evaluate. One is formative, conducted at the beginning of your program phase, because you're forming your questions, you're forming whatever it is you're trying to do, you're forming your resources. Second is process evaluation. That's conducted once the services and activities begin. What's working and what's not? That's in this process, what's happening here? Is it working or is it not? Do we have to tweak something? Do we have to change something? Do we have to scrap this completely? That kind of thing. Those are, by the way, powerful questions, evaluation questions. And then there's this summative evaluation. And that measures both the outcome and the impact, the goals achieved and the programs affected. So let's see. I think let's go to the next slide. I think it has formative evaluation. Formative evaluation ensures that the program activity is feasible, appropriate, and acceptable. It's cost effective before it's fully implemented. So it usually is conducted when a new program or activity is being developed, or when an existing one is being adapted or modified. Process, none. And so it's formative. It's forming. You're forming your plan. You're forming your ideas and putting it down in activities. And the method is used in the implementation stage to assess the needs of the participants. It assesses the adequacy of the resources, which are your inputs. It identifies challenges and barriers that are happening all along the way. In order to implement, we're getting stuck. There's barriers here. Formative is always asking that question, what's getting in the way of us doing what we want to do? And it identifies quality and fidelity of services and documents and maximizes the strengths, what's really working well, what's not quite right yet. The second evaluation method is process evaluation. That determines whether program activities have been implemented as intended and produce certain results, the outputs. So you may, I'm sorry, didn't hear what that is all about.
You know, if somebody accidentally unmuted themselves.
Okay. Okay. So you may conduct process evaluation periodically throughout the life of your program. And you start by reviewing the activities and the output components of the logic model. So process evaluation allows you to track program information related to who, what, when, where questions. Like, to whom did the program, is the program directing its efforts? Where did the program activities take place? What has your program done? What are the barriers for implementation? What did your programs do to address those barriers? And that kind of thing. Still, it's all about implementation and process. It's not about outcomes. Process is during the process, what's going well, what's not quite right, and how do we make it more right? And the third evaluation method is summative. The summative method is commonly used during the evaluation part of the logic model, the outcomes. Impact and outcome are subsections of the summative method. So it's like almost, let's see. I had something specific I wanted to say to you about that. And I'm just checking on that. Yeah. So summative evaluation refers to judging the overall merit of the program. That's the outcome part of the logic model. Summative evaluation judges the worth of the program and significance of the program. The term summative connotes a summit, which means it's important. We've reached to the top. That's important. Or summing up. We're going to judge this. We got to figure out if this is really, what we really want. So the term summative connotes so what happened? So what is the important results that we have here? To what extent were the targeted outcomes attained? And what was the cost effectiveness? Always asking that question, what is the cost effectiveness of the program? Because if it's costing too much and you're putting too much time and effort into it, yeah, you're getting some result, but is it the result that you really wanted? Always asking that question. So we're looking to see what the value of the program was and making a judgment about that. That's summative evaluation. Okay, so let's go to the next slide here. I'm mindful of the time. So context and input evaluation. Now, these are all words. You just got to sort of understand it when you need to go back and listen to this recording to really get an understanding of what it is I'm trying to share here and say to you, and what the scientific research and their words are really meaning. So formative evaluation, some questions there. What are the needs of the participants? Input questions. How can the program be best designed, staffed, and implemented? That's forming the program. Process is the program being implemented as we intended? And if so, great. If not, what are we going to do about that? And how will change be measured? Okay. We might be doing great stuff, but if we don't have data to measure it, if we don't have a plan to measure it and then analyze it, we'll be in trouble. So process evaluation is important. And then summative evaluation. To what extent did the program address the high priority needs of the participants? That's an evaluation, a powerful evaluation question. And how well were the selected inputs, resources, and approaches developed? Was it sound, viable, practical? Process and product evaluation questions. So, formative would be what in process, what are the impediments to this program implementation that needs to be addressed? Like, we don't wait until the program's done. This evaluation team is actually looking at what's happening as we go along in the process. And that's why there is such a thing called process evaluation. We must, along the way, look at it. And process, so some questions there are, based on the current results, how can we improve the program's effectiveness? Never thinking that, oh, the program is effective. That's so easy. We're so busy doing other things. We can't do that. This is what a real evaluation and logic model can do for you. It forces you to answer that question. And the product, what additional resources do we need to ensure the program meets the needs of the target population? So if we have to improve it, what additional resources do we need? And the summative is, how well was implementation challenges overcome? Did we do it? And to what extent did the program successfully address the stated outcomes or the changes and the improvements that we wanted to make? Okay, we're moving into our last learning objective, which is a stakeholder's role in program evaluation. So who are typical stakeholders in a program? Okay, okay. Who are typical stakeholders in program evaluation? There's 3 sets of people. Those are affected, the participants that you're trying to make change for. Those involved in the operation of evaluating. That means your paid evaluator, your staff who's in coordinating the evaluation, your stakeholders, some people in the community that are literally around that table doing every single piece of the logic model and understanding what you're doing. And then those who will use the evaluation for results. And, certainly you will use the evaluation for the results for yourself as an organization, but stakeholders can now they have the data, they have everything to move forward and try to help you get more funding and really use the results and create a valuable program for the future to sustain or to expand. Right? So program stakeholders are program managers and staff, the people assigned to it in the organization. They're the people who will be receiving the services, so representatives of populations that are disproportionately affected by the problem. So I would say that the person who lives way out in the boonies in a rural community, that person, he or she is disproportionately affected because they don't live in the city where everybody can just walk or take a bus, even if there is a bus, to get to the recovery center. Their recovery is more challenging. They don't have that kind of access. So it's those people as well. Local, state, and regional coalitions interested in this public health issue of substance use disorder and recovery. Funding agencies such as national and state governments, all SAMHSA, all those great agencies, private foundations. These people need to be, it would be really nice if you could tell them that we're creating an evaluation plan here and an evaluation for a specific program. And will you join us? Because quite often those stakeholders, community stakeholders and private foundations, whatever their mission is, I'm probably guessing that they want their people to be healthy and not struggling with alcohol and other drugs. Okay. Universities and educational institutions. Okay. And local government state legislators, even governors, business, health, law enforcement, religious, program critics, and private citizens. I want to throw this out there to you. Don't be afraid of program critics and private citizens. I mean, you don't want to have somebody come on your team that's really going to like mess everything up, and really not cooperate and be a team player. But if somebody doesn't like, I'll give you an example. This organization that wanted to improve access to services, they had when they first developed and came to the community, they got this nice place. Some guests were coming in. Of course, they reached out to the mayor and they reached out to the manager. They reached out to all the stakeholders in the community. The mayor just thought that this was a fly-by-night deal. She was not at all, she didn't know much about recovery at all. Most people don't. And the manager was actually a diehard critic. He said, this isn't going to work and you people are weird. Okay. 1 year later, lots of programs are up and running. They got recovery coaches there. I mean, they had a director and an assistant director who really knew their stuff. And they, of course, were in recovery. They are people. And so in recovery, the mayor comes back a year later and she says, well, you really do good things. So they put her on the community committee, the community and programs committee. So now she's creating programs. She's talking about what else we can bring to my great city. And then, and the city manager came back and said, they did give $2,300 the first year to help the organization move forward. He comes back a year later and he says to the director, all right, how much do you need? Really? The director says, yeah, just tell me how much you need. And so he says, okay, $10,000. He says, more. The city manager said, tell me more. All right, 25,000. No, tell me more. They were so impressed with what this organization was doing, and they were learning because the organization was constantly inviting them, even though they had objections and they were critics. The city manager had a bundle of money that just came in, and he says, I'm going to give you $110,000 to support your services. Don't ever deny critics or private citizens to be involved in your programs, and especially the evaluation part. Good example of that. Okay, and the stakeholders' roles are, okay, yeah. The stakeholders' roles are, they determine and prioritize evaluation questions. They assist with data collection, and they interpret it. It's not being interpreted by one or two people. Apply and share the results, and they serve as members of the evaluation team or the evaluation advisory committee, and they advocate. And in the end, you know what they're doing? Like that city manager and that mayor, they have become champions of your organization and the program, and they advocate and act as a champion for the program. And that's where you're going to get a ton more money and more people involved. Benefits of stakeholders. They can increase the credibility of our efforts. They're responsible for day-to-day implementation of the program activities. They get involved in it. They'll advocate and authorize changes to the program that the evaluation may need and recommend, and they will fund or authorize the continuation or expansion of your program. Stakeholders the key thing here is it's not just about one or two stakeholders and you go to their meetings and you say, well, I'm from the recovery organization. No, they're actually doing work. Okay, and I'm just going to say right here and now that this PowerPoint presentation doesn't seem to have the data piece. Let me go forward and see. Nope. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about data. What kind of data to collect? We want to look at qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative data is numerical, okay? It collects numerical data, and qualitative collects verbal information and descriptions. What gets measured gets managed. Peter Drucker, a leader in management practices throughout the globe tells us that what get measures get managed. So you got to get some data. One of the most important concepts in data collection is gathering mixed methods of data. It's the most beneficial to collect both qualitative and quantitative data during the process. And quantitative data quantitative refers to numbers, and the qualitative data refers to non-numeric data, such as stories, short written responses, expressions made by the participants in the staff. So like you go so you need to, like a pre and a post test will tell you how many people took it, how many people came, and how many people took it. That's quantitative. Or how many people answered yes and how many people answered no. That's quantitative. But qualitative is that part whenever you take a training and you're ticking off the boxes, you like this, you on a scale of 1 to 10 or whatever. And then there's that place to put in and add your ideas about what you really liked about this training, what you didn't like. That's qualitative. Both qualitative data and quantitative data have their strengths, and they also have their weaknesses. That's why we're asking you to use both.
Joe, I'm sorry to interrupt you. But the reason why we had another webinar, if you recall, on data collection. So that's why we don't need to go into this too much, which is good because we're getting pretty close to time. So I'm wondering if we can switch over to Q&A to see if anybody has any questions.
I think that's a great idea. Thank you. So any questions that you come up with, Rachel, from the chat? Yeah, I see that you already learned about collection data and how to collect it through, one-on-one interviews and things like, and observations and surveys. Okay. What might be a question? What comes up here? What's coming up for you, if anything?
And our tech support just let me know that you can come off mute if you'd like to speak up, or you can raise your hand. There's also the Q&A box. You can put in your question as well.
What role does the growing interest in equity have on the managed outcomes of cultural competency? Excellent question. Diversity, equity, justice. It's playing a big role. And as a matter of fact, when I was putting these PowerPoints together, that was addressed. And you need to start that in a foundational way. When you're first starting your program, you need to look at that. There's so much good information out on the web about program evaluation and diversity and justice and equity and cultural competency. And hopefully you probably all have taken a cultural competency diversity training.
Is his hand raised?
And I think we have just a few more minutes. And if you have a question, great. Oh, you have a question, Jeffrey. Okay.
Yes, we're a little bit different. We're an online platform for teens, and they notoriously don't want to fill out surveys or enter in data. And so we get the numbers of how many hundreds and thousands show up a month and what percentage, 30% go to the resources tabs, but we can't really follow them after that. We have, the qualitative stories of, how it's helped them and saved a couple lives and things like that. I just wanted to ask you if you had other thoughts of ways we could do evaluation, because we're kind of in that pickle.
The only thing that comes to mind is street workers, who you go and you just hang out with teens and you just ask these big open questions like, what do you know about what's happening to your friends when using, this and that? What would really work? What would really work? I mean, they're just asking the people themselves. They know the answers, and we have to be careful not to not talk to them and hear their voices. You're probably doing that already, and you may not have money to do that, but there's a problem, and there's an evaluation plan with a program that you can create. Out street workers. Thank you. Somebody else had their hand up. I think they're good. So now we have a few minutes. I'm just going to ask you to, each of you, everyone, to write in the chat one thing or more, one thing that you've learned and that you're going to take away and use as we move forward. Or just one thing that, one or more things that you've learned. The logic model. You bet. The entire framework of a logic model. And what encompasses, what's behind the logic model? A theory of change. More insight on logic models. Measurement drives evaluation. You bet. This reinforced for me the necessity of incorporating all stakeholders in a comprehensive evaluation process. Yes, don't think that they don't want to sit there. Find the ones that have similar missions. Whatever work you're doing, they're doing, and then they could say, well, this is what I'm doing. I'm working in collaboration with others in my community. That's how they get money anyway, and that's how you'll get money, by doing it in collaboration. To embrace and encourage donor investor base. Yeah. By the way, never not take the opportunity to just ask for money, ask, and you shall receive. Continue on the good work and document everything. You never know if you will meet someone who will be an important supporter or funder later. I have used logic models for program design, but learned how to incorporate it into evaluation questions and indicators. Again, just go online and our evaluation questions for program, and you'll get so many questions. I mean, I'm also a life coach, and it's all about asking questions, those powerful questions that get people to think. And then they got to take it and then decide what they're going to do. So it's all about decision making, these open questions. When considering a program's performance, considering how individuals, clients, and staff are experiencing engaging with the services is an essential, you bet, essential part of gathering a true picture. How is this working for the participants? Forget about how it's working for you. That's another question. But a bigger question is, how is this working for the participants? Ensuring to incorporate their feedback and how to improve the program to be inclusive is vital, as diverse voices are needed, but also to highlight the ways in which your organization is serving as a model for others. Evaluation is greatly a part of the storytelling as well as assessment. Yeah. 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 When I first learned evaluation, I was like, well, I learned it 35 years ago. As a matter of fact, in 1965, I was 13 years old. I was shocked to read that in 1965, evaluation finally became funded. In other words, it didn't have the credibility. And it started during my lifetime. I thought it was, going on for a long time before that. So we're really making, strides. And evaluation always scared me. It doesn't scare me now because of that logic model. I know how to do it. And I know what an evaluation plan is. And it has to have those stakeholders in there. And it's so clear. It's like when you work with the logic model, you're setting everything up. You're deciding every activity, every resource that you need, everything that you want results, and the actual percentage of change that you want. You don't even, that's it. You've done the hard work. Now you got to do it. But the hard work was creating the program. What other? Thank you, clearly, for defining logic models. Good. Great. If there's no other questions, then I think we're done. And I don't know, let's see. In this, I put two pages of resources. There's a lot of resources out there, but there are a couple I want to point out. And I think it was in the first page. There's a guy by the name of Han. Can't remember his first name. Maybe he's on the second page. Pan, middle of the second page. How to determine the impact of your mindfulness program. Well, his thing was a mindfulness program, but he teaches you the logic model in a very friendly way. I would connect with that. And then the CIFF is another area where they really talk about logic models and how to make that work. And better evaluation, so you can see here that there are key organizations that do this work and want to help you. I wish you luck in all of your work, and thank you so much for doing the work and for also remembering the people that you're doing it for.
Thank you so much, Joe, for your presentation today. And I really appreciate it. If there's any other questions, you can put that in the Q&A. Otherwise, please know that we do have here the, oh, it's not in here, sorry, it'll be in the chat. The surveys for attendance as well as for feedback. So please be sure to complete both, especially the attendance, so that we know you were here. That's very important. So as you see, they just were posted. Thank you so much, Sarah. So please complete those. And thank you so much for being here today, Joe. Thank you again.
I just wanted to say the attendance survey is about quantitative, numerical, and the feedback survey is qualitative, the feedback, the thinking that you have. So there it is right there. Good examples.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you all so much for being here today.
Bye, everyone.
Mhm.